Brad Sigmon had a choice: lethal injection or firing squad. He chose the firing squad, a method of execution that hadn't been used in the US in over 15 years. On March 7th, 2025, 3 officers stood in position, their rifles aimed at one target. A single command was given. 3 gunshots followed. By 6:08 p.m., it was over. But this wasn't just about how he died. It was about why he was there in the first place. Before the bullets, before the black hood, before his final words. This is the story of Brad Sigmon. Brad Sigmon and Rebecca Barbar had been in a relationship for 3 years, living together until early 2001, when Rebecca decided to end it. She moved in with her parents, hoping to escape the chaos, but Brad couldn't accept it. He became obsessed. He stalked her, couldn't let go. One night he confided in a friend, Eugene Starber, telling him of his plan. He would break into the Barbar home, tie up Rebecca's parents, and force her to speak with him. Starber refused to be involved, but Sigmon, he wasn't going to stop. The next morning, February 20th, 2001, Sigmon put his plan into action. He broke into the Lark home, where Rebecca's parents, David and Gladys, were sleeping. A baseball bat was the weapon of choice. He struck them, over and over, brutally. The bat crashed into their skulls, leaving them unresponsive. When the silence finally fell, Sigmon wasn't done. He stole David's gun and waited for Rebecca to return. When she walked through the door, her nightmare began. Sigmon forced her at gunpoint into his car, threatening to take her away, far from the life she knew. But Rebecca wasn't willing to be a victim. She jumped out of the car, running for her life as Sigmon fired at her in desperation. She made it to safety, but not before suffering the horror of seeing her parents lying lifeless on the floor, their blood staining the home she once knew. What was once a home filled with love was now a crime scene, and Rebecca was left to deal with the aftermath. After Sigmon fled the scene, the hunt began. The police knew the crime was far from random. This was personal. Rebecca's escape and her parents' deaths were now the focus of every law enforcement officer in South Carolina. Authorities quickly issued arrest warrants for murder, kidnapping, and assault with intent to kill. Sigmon wasn't going to make it easy. He was on the run for 11 days, hiding in the shadows, trying to outrun justice. During those days, his story spread and the urgency increased. The public was terrified. Meanwhile, Rebecca Barbar, already dealing with the trauma of the attack, had to face the reality of what was happening. The man she had once loved had just taken her parents from her. The search went on until he was finally caught. In Gatlinburg, Tennessee, Sigmon was found and arrested. His escape had ended. He was extradited back to South Carolina to face the consequences of what he had done. But this was just the beginning. The trial began in July 2002. The evidence was clear. Sigmon had brutally killed David and Gladys Lark. The baseball bat used in the attack, the blood-stained scene, it all pointed to him. Detective Mike McNamara mapped out the crime, showing the cold efficiency with which Sigmon carried out the attack. Then came the testimony from Cheryl Tomberlin, Sigmon's ex-wife. She spoke about the violence that had marked their marriage, giving the jury a chilling glimpse into his disturbing past. But it was Rebecca Barbar, the daughter of the victims, who left the most lasting impact. She was forced to relive the nightmare of watching her parents violently taken from her. The jury deliberated, and the verdict was clear: death. Sigmon, unmoved, glanced at Rebecca one last time before being led out of the courtroom. His fate was sealed, and for the families left behind, the pain would never truly end. For over 20 years, Brad Sigmon sat on death row. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into years. But with every passing year, his conviction remained intact. He filed appeal after appeal, each one rejected, each one failing to change his fate. Sigmon's lawyers argued against his execution, claiming the method of lethal injection caused prolonged suffering. They pointed to recent cases where inmates seemed to linger for minutes after receiving the lethal dose. But these arguments fell on deaf ears. The state was determined to carry out the sentence. Then came a turning point. South Carolina's struggle to secure lethal injection drugs. The state couldn't get the necessary supplies, so the firing squad became an option. In 2022, the state spent $544,000 to construct a firing squad chamber in its execution facility. It was a new method, but one that had been used only 3 times before, and not since 2010. The firing squad was now a backup for executions in South Carolina, and Sigmon would become the first man in the state to face it. For over 2 decades, Sigmon had waited, but now, finally, the day of his execution had come. The legal battles had ended, and the method was set. March 7, 2025 would be the day his life would end. The night before his execution, Brad Sigmon made a final request. He asked for 3 buckets of KFC's original recipe, planning to share it with his fellow inmates. But that request was denied. Instead, he was served a modest meal. 4 pieces of fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, green beans, biscuits, cheesecake, and sweet tea. As he sat down to his last meal, it wasn't about indulgence. It was about the final moments before facing the end. When the time came for his final words, Sigmon spoke, his voice calm, detached. He quoted 4 Bible passages expressing his opposition to the death penalty. He claimed that nowhere in the New Testament does God give man the authority to take another's life. Through his attorney, Sigmon made one last plea. Now we are under God's grace and mercy. Let my Christian brothers work to end this punishment. But for those in the room, those words rang hollow. A man who had taken 2 lives now wanted mercy for himself. The impact of his actions, the lives destroyed, could not be undone by Scripture. March 7th, 2025. Sigmon was strapped to a specially designed chair. A black hood was placed over his head. 3 officers stood in position, rifles aimed at his chest. The command was given, 3 gunshots, a single instant. The room went silent. Witnesses described the moment as loud, chilling, the shockwaves of those shots still echoing in their minds. Sigmon was declared dead at 6:08 p.m. For Rebecca Barber, this moment was a long time coming, but it didn't bring closure. In her first interview since the murders, she said, "This has destroyed my family, but I don't believe his death was the answer." The execution was a deeply emotional, raw moment for all involved. A man's life ended, but the scars left behind, on the victims, on the family, were much deeper. Sigmon's death brought no real justice, no real peace, just the cold finality of what his choices had led to. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more in-depth true crime cases. And as always, thank you for watching.